Now we're going to talk about the relationship between objects and functions, and I'm going to show you how you can actually place a function on an object. So we'll clear out the console and we're going to create a new object called animal, and I'm going to make this into an object, so I'll use my curly braces. I'm going to use shift return to drop down to the next line, and then I'll assign some properties for my animal. So we'll say type, and the type is going to be a dog, and I'll use a comma since I want to add another property, and the next property is going to be color, and the color of the dog is going to be brown. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a function inside of this particular object. So I'm going to make my property, and my property is going to be sound, and I'm going to assign the value to be a function. So I'll write function, and then I'm going to put the name of the function. So in this case, the name of the function is going to be the same as the property name. And you'll see that naming our functions in this way is actually optional, because the function can be accessed by just calling the property name of sound. We don't actually need the name of the function. So normally if we were creating a function, we would create something that looks like this, where we would write the keyword function, we would put the name of the function, we would open and close our parentheses, and then we would open our curly braces, and then we would put whatever statements we would want to run inside of our function. So in this case, we're going to use console.log, and I want to go ahead and have my dog make a sound. The dog I'm describing right here is a small dog, so it's just going to make a little yip, where maybe I would create a different type of dog that would have a loud bark or something like that. But I'm just going to say that I want to make the sound that is a little yip like this. Now, if I wanted to add any other properties, I could continue to add the properties. I would just use a comma here, because this essentially is going to be the end of the sound property, right? The whole function is part of the sound property. It essentially is the value of sound. And I could make some other property about my dog. And now I am done, so I'm going to use my curly brace to close my animal. And you can see that if we ask for the value of animal, it's going to tell us all of this information. And you can see that under our sound property, it's going to list an F here, indicating that this is a function. And if we expand the properties of this, you can see that the sound property has more information involved in it. So if we wanted to go ahead and run this function, if we normally, to run a function, we would just put the name of the function. So here, if I just went ahead and said sound and tried to run that, it's going to give me an error because sound is not defined. And remember, because of scope, sound only exists inside of animal. So here, if we do animal.sound, you can see that it's going to give us the function as a result. So this isn't exactly what we want, but it's getting closer. It's going to show us the value of the sound property and display that for us. What I really want to have happen here is I want the console to log the sound that we've specified. So to do that, all we have to do is we have to call animal.sound and then pass on our parentheses like we normally would when we want to run or call a function. And now when we hit return, you can see that it's going to display yip. So that's great. In this way, we can nest a function inside of an object, and when we want to run that function, we're just going to specify the object name followed by a dot, then the name of the property, and we'll add the parentheses indicating that this property is a function, and it will run that function. So as you can see here, it is possible that we could nest a function inside of an object. And when you nest functions inside of objects, remember how I said that the name of the function is optional? It's not really necessary because we're accessing the function via the property name. So let me just clear out my console, and I'm going to recreate the object again. And this time we're just going to eliminate the name of the function. So in essence, what I'm doing here is I'm creating an anonymous function. So when I define my object, by hitting return, the object has now been created. And if I want to run the function that is on that object, I would just simply put the object followed by dot, and then I would put the name of the property followed by my open close parentheses. And when I hit return, it's going to run the function. So as you can see, this works in the exact same way. We are able to call the function by simply using the property name, and as long as we're following the property name by the parentheses, JavaScript knows that this property is actually a function. Because remember, if I just put the name of the object followed by the property and no parentheses, then it's just going to generate the value of that particular property, but it's not running the function, it's just displaying it. So that is an important distinction, and it definitely is really useful to be able to nest these functions inside of objects. That's something that we do commonly. And when we do that in JavaScript, what's actually happening is that a nested function like this pattern of putting a function on an object, this becomes a method. So a method is simply a property that is equal to a function. So technically, sound is a method on the animal object. And so it's a small distinction, but you probably will hear that terminology, functions and methods. This is what actually defines a method instead of a function. A lot of people use those terms interchangeably, and in essence, they are the same thing, but technically, a function becomes a method when the function is a property.